What does a stone, a ring, a bone box, and a first century hill have to do with Jesus? More than you may think. And the answer actually might surprise you. So as we continue our mini-series through biblical archaeology, everything that we talk about today comes from the first century. That's when Jesus was born, grew up, and was doing his ministry, and eventually was crucified during this time. Also during this time, this guy was in charge of the Roman Empire, and also this guy. Most of us know this guy. This is Tiberius Caesar, but we don't really know who this guy is, and we'll get to him in a little bit. So for us to understand what was kind of going on politically in the Roman Empire at this time, Tiberius wanted to party it up and live like a king, but didn't want the responsibility of running an empire. So he put this guy over here that we mentioned earlier in charge. That's Sejanus. He was the head guy of the Praetorian Guard. So he had a lot of power and was actually doing the running of the country, and many people think that he was the one that was doing all the calls and doing the day-to-day activities for the Roman Empire. So he was appointing people such as Pontius Pilate, who we'll talk about here shortly. And Tiberius just went to Capri, which you can see on your screen right here, as a little luxury resort. He didn't want to do the running of the country, so he just partied it up on a little island. So Sejanus gained a lot of power, and a lot of people think that he was appointing people, like I said, like Pontius Pilate, and other prefects and governors across the empire to rule. So Sejanus was actually the one that was ruling, and later on he was assassinated and another person took his spot. But that's just a little brief history. Our main focus today is on Pontius Pilate, and why he's important to the narrative of the Bible. So most of us know that Pontius Pilate was the one that crucified Jesus and had him crucified. Now, what we don't know is that Pilate was kind of in a bad spot. He had several uprisings throughout his tenure as prefect of Judea, and he was kind of on a limb here. Didn't want another revolt, so when the people of Jerusalem and the high priest brought Jesus up for a trial and then wanted him to be executed, he was a little hesitant to do that, but he didn't want an uprising from the Jewish people either, because he thought he would be on his last terms if he did. So that's why he crucified Jesus. He didn't think that he was guilty, but he didn't want an uprising for his own sake. Now, a lot of skeptics didn't believe that Pontius Pilate actually existed. Now, he was named throughout history by other historians, but they just thought that they were using that from the Bible. This stone was found in 1961 at Caesarea Maritima. I'm probably saying that wrong, but they were doing an excavation there, and when they found this stone, it was written in Latin, and it was a dedication to Tiberius on a building. But there was another inscription as well, and it read, Pontius Pilate, Prefect of Judea. So this shows in Luke, whenever he wrote it down and recorded it, that he was correct and understood the titles of the time and knew, since he was living in the area and probably knew about Pontius Pilate, and wrote it down in the Bible. So again, the Bible is historically accurate on its accounts and how it occurred. But we're not quite done with Pilate yet. But first, we have to travel to Herodium. Herodium was a fortified city that was built by Herod the Great along a trade route, and it was built to guard that trade route. Now, the Romans used it for the very same reason throughout their history, and it was an important site. Now, at Herodium in 1969, they were doing excavations, and they found a ring. But they knew there was an inscription, but they couldn't quite see it and make it out. Technology finally got good enough where they could read the inscription, and it said, of Pilate. This was a reference to Pontius Pilate. This wasn't a ring that he wore, probably, but it was a ring that was used by a high official under him as a signet ring. That is, they would use this ring to stamp hot wax so that they could seal items so they knew that it wouldn't be tampered with. So anything from wine to important letters would be stamped with this ring and sent across to Pilate, probably himself, and if the seal was broken, they knew that it was tampered with. If it wasn't broken, they knew that no one had tampered with it. This little ring shows that Pontius Pilate had a high degree of clout and was in charge of the area during this time. And again, they had this from the 1st century, and they dated this ring to the 1st century. Also goes to show that technology sometimes has to catch up for us to understand the full understanding of these items. Now we're going to talk about some bone boxes, also called ossuaries. Now, the practice in first century Judea for the Israelites was that they would place your body in a tomb, your body would decay away, only leaving your bones, and then they would come back later, collect these bones, and put them in the ossuary. Now, it wasn't uncommon to find several individuals in one ossuary. Now, in this ossuary right here, you can see this very ornate, and as you can probably think, that this ornation costs a lot of money to make, and you would be correct. So whoever had this ossuary was very rich. Now the second one you can see, this one's very plain. It's crudely carved out, but although it was the custom, it wasn't as high as craftsmanship. There's still an inscription on it identifying the person inside, or the people inside, but there's not all the intricate detailing that the first one had. We'll talk about this one later, but we're going to go back to the first one that you saw on your screen. This one's called the Caiaphas Ossuary. That's important because we know that Caiaphas was a high priest during Jesus' trial. He's the one that said that Jesus was committing blasphemy and wanted Jesus crucified. Now, this one doesn't tie Caiaphas 100% and it only names him on it, but it does show that it's probably the family tomb of Caiaphas. And since it's so ornately done and handcrafted, we know that it had a lot of money involved in doing it, which Caiaphas would have had being the high priest. Now, the inscription says, Joseph, son of Caiaphas. Now, the last name is the family name, so that's why we assume. And most historians and archaeologists agree that this is probably Caiaphas' family tomb. Now we're going to go talk about the second one that you saw. This is called the James Ossuary. Now on this it says, James, son of Joseph. And then it continues on, brother of Jesus. Pretty compelling, right? Hey, we found it, right? We found the James, who was the brother of Jesus, and we found it written in stone, right? Well, this one's highly debated. Many think that the initial inscription of James, son of Joseph, was initially put on there. And that makes sense because James was a very used name, and so was Joseph of the time. Now again, this is highly debated, but what they do say is that it was probably added in the first century. So if it is a forgery, it was an early forgery, and many people can't debate that. They've done several tests and found that the mildew inside the crevices of the inscription match from the first century. Now, I don't know how they go about testing all that, but they do, and that's the verdict that they've come to. So far we've covered 4 things. 2 to Pilate and 2 bone boxes or ossuaries. So we know that Pilate was a real figure and the Bible account is supported by that. The other one was the first bone box, which was of Caiaphas, the high priest who was there for Jesus' trial. And the second one was a little more debated, but we do know that it was a person named James, who was the son of Joseph. But we don't know if the actual inscription that says brother of Jesus is actually legitimate or not. But it is a very good forgery according to historians who do look at it and research this. Now the last thing that we're going to talk about is a heel bone. And why is this heel bone important? Now as you can see and are looking at it on your screen, you'll notice there's a spike going through the heel bone. Now, the Bible is the only account that we ever had throughout history that shows a full crucifixion and details it very well. Now, they don't talk about Jesus being nailed to the cross during the initial crucifixion because at that time it would have been known, so they didn't think that it would be included or need to be included because they had probably seen other people crucified in the same manner. However, when Jesus returns after the 3 days and him reappearing to the disciples, they can see the wounds on his hands and feet, and they know that he is the living God because of the piercings on his one. Now Thomas doubted this, and he didn't believe it until he saw the wounds on the hands and the feet, which was the piercings where they nailed him up. Now, many historians prior to this discovery said that the Bible was full of it and that nails were never used to crucify people. But this discovery here proved it. But this one's not the only one. There was a second one, as you can see here, and it was found in Europe. Now, this was found in Finstanton, England, and this goes to show that the Roman Empire not only crucified people, but they did it across their entire empire. So not only was it the furthest southeast part of their empire, they also did it in the furthest north part of their empire. This goes to show that the Bible was accurate in its depiction of the crucifixion and that they actually used nails to crucify people. Again, the Bible didn't put in initially the crucifixion because they said he was crucified. And they understood in that time how people were crucified. And then when Jesus returns, you see the wounds on his hand, knowing that there was nails used in that crucifixion. So these two finds prove the Bible's depiction of crucifixion accurately. Again, it's finds like these that help us understand that the Bible has actual historical narrative in it and is very accurate in its depiction on everything that it puts out. Also, there are more and more and more finds being found every day that support the Bible. We just have to find them and look at them. And I find that lots of people don't understand and don't know that there's so much artifacts and discoveries that actually support the Bible. Now, if you actually like this video and the talks that we had today, please leave a like and a comment of your favorite one below. And we'll continue the mini-series with the third episode coming up. I hope that everything's going well for you, and God bless you in everything you do.